Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for you to take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Musical lyrical lingo. Every episode a new bingo. Laugh and sing, go with the flow. Tune in as the memories grow.
Hello and welcome to Musical Lyrical Lingo. We're your hosts, Tim
and LJ today, and every week we will be discussing musicals, but specifically what they taught us.
Welcome, bienvenue, welcome. Welcome back, folks. They came back. Hopefully you had a lovely, lovey-dovey weekend last weekend.
Love the pictures, love them all.
Have we got any? Who knows? How we doing this week?
We're doing great.
All good.
Great. Yeah, absolutely.
Good
well
stuff.
Rested and all that jazz.
Fantastic.
Yeah, what about you?
Ready to go again?
Yeah.
I'm good. At the time of recording, I finished for a week's holiday tomorrow.
Amazing. Me too.
Yeah, that's good. It's what
Much
the doctor
needed.
has definitely ordered, Lauren.
But you know what I've ordered?
What have you ordered?
Musical theatre news.
You've ordered... Oh, wow, sir. Okay. That was interesting. It was very interesting. Well...
Coming up with a new way each week to get you to tell us all.
Oh, that was nice. I like that. Well done. I've got two pieces of very exciting musical theatre news, I think, in my opinion. But then I also have a theatre etiquette question to ask you this week. Because it is linked to the musical we're going to talk about. Okay? Yep. So, let's start with the exciting musical theatre news. So, the musical has been announced for this year's Hollywood Bowl Summer Musical Spectacular. So, you know the way the Hollywood Bowl have this thing that they do every year of reviving, the tradition of musical theatre productions playing in the iconic venue. Mm-hmm. Well, this year's, do you know this yet? This year's Hollywood Bowl Summer Musical is going to be Jesus Christ Superstar.
Love it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice. Yeah. I think a couple of years ago they did Little Mermaid and I was like, what were they thinking? It was not great.
Yeah, and did not do Lion King last year?
It wasn't great either. No, that was the one that Beyonce's daughter was... No. Kim Kardashian's daughter was like Simba or something, or like young Nala or whatever. Yeah, so that's exciting. I think that'll be really good. Okay. And this is even more exciting. The long-awaited, professionally shot West End production of Six, the musical, that was filmed in the Vaudeville Theatre, is set to be released in cinemas around the UK from the 6th of April.
It is. And they actually, today, time of recording, I think the trailer went live.
No way.
Just a couple of hours ago. Yeah.
Really? And listeners, I haven't seen that yet. Yeah. So my fresh theatre news was even hotter off the press than that. Yeah, no, very exciting. Yeah. Okay.
Hold on. We've got some more things too.
Oh, yes. So, David Baddiel. I always get confused. Is it Baddiel? So, he obviously, comedian, we know him as a comedian in the UK, but also then took to writing...
musicals.
Well, before musicals, writing children's books. And one of his children...
He wrote musicals before he wrote children's books.
What musical did he write before his children's books then?
We Will Rock You and...
Oh, did he? I thought that was Ben Elton. That's Ben Elton, Lauren.
I'm thinking of the wrong
flip!
person.
I flippin' I love when you get it wrong and you look at me like I'm stupid. No, that's the wrong person, Lauren.
That's the wrong person. Oh, I'm tired.
This theatre news has got nothing to do with Ben Elton, okay? It's got to do with David Baddiel.
Sorry.
Yeah, so his children's book, The Parent Agency, is going to be his first book that is having the musical theatre treatment and will be playing in the Storyhouse Chester from the 15th of February to the 2nd of March prior to a planned national tour and London run. Now, what's even more exciting about this is we might just have a wee friend of the podcast that's just been cast in said the parent agency.
Yes. And right now, I think they're just finishing rehearsals and they're about to move into like London rehearsals now.
That's right, yeah. So all the best to our wonderful friend Sarah McFarlane, who is starring in that.
Oh, that's exciting.
It is exciting, but it is David Baddiel's musical, not Ben Elton's, okay?
I just said there.
Honest to goodness, you were looking at me like I had 5 heads going, excuse me, he's written loads of musicals.
I'm so sorry.
It's
just
fine.
Sometimes I get like
So
C
excited.
letters and then I just make stuff up.
I see letters D and B.
B, Ben, B.
Oh, you just saw the B.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Right. Can I speak to you about theatre etiquette for a wee minute? Because you know nothing grinds our gears more than bad theatre etiquette.
Yeah.
So, a friend of mine and a friend of the podcast was recently in London seeing a few pieces of musical theatre. Now, he saw the show that we're going to talk about today, okay? But he also saw Hadestown, which also has its own fantastic theatre news, but we'll talk about that in the next episode.
Okay, yeah.
But he had to go and see Hadestown twice. He had to return to see it a second time because the first time he went to see it on his trip, he was sitting behind an audience member who was wearing a hat, a broad-brimmed, like not cowboy Stetson hat, but you know, it was a lady and she was wearing quite a broad-brimmed, like fashionista kind of hat, right? Now, he did politely tap her on the shoulder and ask her if she would mind removing the hat just because he couldn't really see behind, to which he got a tut and her other party, so who she was with, proceeded to put his hood up. And he sat through the first act of the show and really didn't see very much. Ended up going to speak to theatre management who moved him for Act 2, but he felt he needed to go back and see, I mean, any excuse to go back to the theatre, right? But he felt he needed to go back and see it again properly because he kind of didn't see much of the first half.
Wild.
Isn't that wild?
I mean, you don't need your hat on, love. Take it off.
Right. So he did do the right thing in politely tapping her on the shoulder and saying, would you mind removing your hat?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Yeah. Just like whenever we were in London, me and Aaron went to see Back to the Future. We had some people talking behind us very loudly in Italian and Spanish. So, you know, we turned around and said, you need to be quiet.
You know Italian and Spanish?
Well, no, I just knew it wasn't English.
I was like, that's amazing. You told them to be quiet in Italian and Spanish?
No.
They both are.
No, it was actually really bad that the ushers did have to come and like shine the lights and stuff in them. But I mean,
but no usher came near her.
Oh.
Did they ask her as well? I don't know if they did. I can't remember that part of the story.
No, I think that's fine. Like, okay, fair enough. You've asked somebody to take their hat off and they've chosen not to. That is just a bit rude. There's not really anything you can do about that, though.
But do you think that theatre ushers and theatre management, you know the way they check your bags as you're coming into the theatre, should they check your headwear?
Yeah, I think if it's going to be obstructing somebody's view.
That's a beautiful hat, madam, but would you mind when you take your seats in the auditorium taking it off? Even if you haven't washed your hair that day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the lights go down.
I mean, I think that is 100% the right answer, but I just thought that's an interesting theatre etiquette question to bring to the pod. Listeners out there, he might even get in touch. He might go, that story is completely wrong. You picked it up the wrong way. But other podcast listeners, do get in touch if you have any of your own theatre etiquette dilemmas or questions for us. Yeah. It would be good to bring them to the pod.
Now, let me ask you. Whenever you were an usher, would you have said
1,000%.
Yeah.
But I feel I was a bit no holds barred. In my ushering. I didn't take no nonsense. Yeah. Because as a theatre goer and a theatre lover, there was empathy. I completely understood what would be annoying and what wouldn't be annoying.
Not
do you know?
popcorn. We're not a cinema.
Oh, listen, I lost my rag when the theatre I was working in decided all of a sudden overnight they were going to start selling popcorn. I think I famously went, "What is this, a cinema? We don't eat popcorn when watching the show." I refused to sell it. You needn't put me on that stall. I'm not selling that popcorn. It all came out. You can imagine, can't you?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Anyway, there we go. I just thought, interesting. Must bring it to the pod, see what we
Yeah.
think.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Not at all. Shall we move on to this week's musical then?
We are very excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And we kind of gave a bit of a clue on our intro, didn't we?
Oh, yeah.
We said, welcome, bienvenue, welcome.
So this week we are doing...
Bum, 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 bum. Are you going to tell? Like I'm doing the intro.
right,
Bum,
sorry.
bum, 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 bum.
Cabaret!
Bum, 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 bum. Welcome, bienvenue, welcome. That's one of my on list to play characters. Yeah. I want to play the MC in Cabaret, not Sally Bowles, just the MC.
Okay.
You could play Sally Bowles.
I'll play Sally. Okay.
What God is sitting alone in your room?
Love it. Love it. So yeah, Cabaret, a big musical.
A big musical, yeah.
A lot of
To unpack.
yeah, a lot to unpack, and I learned a lot, not necessarily from the actual musical, but just a lot around it.
Yeah.
This week, and it's very much in our world because of this, what it's doing. Like Sally and MC are two different people every 6
Oh,
weeks.
you're talking about the one that's at the one that's in the West End at the moment, and I think they're starting to do that in Broadway too, aren't they? They're starting to bring in which is highly annoying because obviously the revival of Cabaret opened in London. Is it 3 years ago? 2 years ago?
2021.
Isn't
and
that insane?
I actually was like, no, they've got that wrong.
Yeah.
They've got that wrong. But it only that then transferred to Broadway just at the end of 2023, going into 2024. So I think that's where I was getting confused because Eddie Redmayne, he moved over. So I think I was like, no, there's absolutely no way that was 2021. But
so he opened it as MC in London and then has just opened it in MC in Broadway. Yeah, and at the time, like, for the first year, I think, if not longer, when it opened in London, you could not get a ticket for love nor money. No. Like, it just was impossible. So you kind of think a musical that is that popular for the first year and a half, say, of its run, eventually the popularity will start to die down. It might still be a very popular show, but you have a chance of getting some tickets. Yeah. But now they've started, as you say, to do this, replacing the Sally and the MC, because they're getting these and the names they're getting are fantastic, but obviously because they're big stars in their own right in different, franchises or in TV and film, they do limited runs, which means the popularity continues and you still can't get a bloody ticket. And it's like, at some point I would like to see this revival. I don't, at this point, I almost don't care who I see in it. I just would like to see it because all you hear is how insanely brilliant it is. Do you know what I mean? But you can't get tickets for love nor money.
So are you going to talk about who is currently
right up to date. Marisha Wallace and Billy Porter are the latest duo to take on the roles of Sally Bowles and MC. They started on the 25th of January. Now, Marisha Wallace, we kind of already know. She's got her British citizenship. She's done quite a few musicals now in the West End, and I'm on her number one fan list. But this will mark Billy Porter's West End debut. And he is a massive singer and actor with many accolades to his name, including an Emmy for his role in the TV series Pose. Did you see that?
No.
Lauren, you need to go on and watch the 3 seasons of Pose. You would love it. You got to watch it. And also, musical theatre fans know him for his Tony-winning performance originating the role of Lola in the original Broadway Kinky Boots. So welcome to both of them.
Yeah, and he was on Graham Norton a couple of weeks ago.
He's fabulous.
He is great. He brings so much like light and joy to all of his interviews. But really interesting was, and we'll probably talk about it, is there was a really big famous musical back in the 90s, and he asked to be part of that, but they said sort of like no. And now this
production of Cabaret.
Yeah. And this will be the first time that the two leads in Cabaret are played by persons of colour.
Yeah.
Which is crazy that it's taken.
Yeah. And like when he got the no back then, he went away and he did the research, because I think the answer that he was given was, it's not what we're looking for. Almost like, you're not the right colour. Yeah. And he, to his credit, went away and did his research. And what he's saying, rightfully, and what Marisha is saying as well, is we were always there. Yeah. Two people of colour, we've always been there. Even dating back to, 1930s, Berlin, Germany, they, people of colour were still there. Yeah. So why on earth can we not get cast in shows like Cabaret? So it's iconic what's going on. Yeah. It's groundbreaking, and it's never been seen before for this musical, and that's really exciting. And I just think fair dues to you for continuing to bang on those doors until producers actually go, no, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, no, great. And I think as well, like Marisha says I want to play Sally. She did, and then she said, and Billy will be MC. Like,
she got in contact with the producers, didn't she? And she was like, any chance? Yeah. And to be fair, the producers didn't think about it and went, absolutely. Yeah. But who could play your MC? And she was like, my mate Billy. Yeah. And then she just phoned him. Yeah. If you're in the UK and you have access to the Graham Norton show, go and listen to that interview. Yeah. It was really interesting. And he's just entertaining anyway, isn't he, Billy Porter, like in everything he does.
Great. And I can't look up the names. I don't have them written down because my phone is currently being used. But at the moment in Broadway, we have got a Sally and we've got an MC, and their names have escaped me. This is terrible. It is the girl who does the voice of Moana, and she was also in Mean Girls.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not gonna say it correctly. Yeah. So I don't want to. And then MC is
Adam Lambert.
Adam Lambert.
Yeah.
And really significantly as well, he is Jewish. And as he says, he is like, when they were performing there a couple of weeks ago, it was also reminiscent about what goes on in this musical and this terrible stuff that happened in Nazi Germany. And he's a Jew and he is queer, and it's really important to have constant representation also in 2025. So it's just lovely that across both productions, people feel like they're having a voice.
Yeah, there are a few. Let's talk about the musical then. So there are a few more important musicals than Cabaret. Importantly, yes, it was a big hit, spawned a great film, and incorporated a clutch of famous songs that are recognisable. Even to, I think, non-musical theatre fans would know some of the Cabaret hits. Do you know what I mean? But more so, it's important more so because of what it tells us about ourselves, and what it gets. It makes audiences question. Yeah. When they go and watch it. Yeah. The story concerns the doomed love affair between Sally Bowles and Cliff Bradshaw, a young American writer. Conducted in the shadow of the encroaching Nazi regime, their relationship first soars effortlessly towards marriage and emigration to America, but ultimately ends in sadness, abortion and separation. The material centres around a seedy Kit Kat cabaret club and the lives of its patrons and performers in Berlin immediately pre-World War II.
Yeah. Book by Joe Mastersoff, lyrics by Fred Ebb, and music by John Kander. So it did open in 1966 on the 20th of November, my sister's birthday, but not 1966, at the Broadhurst Theatre, and it had 1,165 performances. Hal Prince was the director.
Yes. And he has a very important role to play in all of this.
Yeah. Major. We also have just talked about Hal Prince from his West Side Story work too, so another little wee connection there.
Like we planned it, we didn't.
Sally at the time was Jill Halfworth, and the MC was Joel Grey. So I'll go back into all of that. But it then went to the West End on the 28th of February 1968. And it was in the Palace Theatre. It only had 336 performances. Cast was Judi Dench.
I was about to say, but it had Judi Dench.
Yeah, Sally was Judi Dench. And MC was Barry Dennen. Then most famously is director Bob Fosse took it on in 1972, where it won 8 Oscars, as it starred Liza Minnelli as Sally, and Joel Grey reprised the role of MC. It is said to be one of the most daring musicals, and everything that you spoke about there.
Yeah.
It is based on a play called I Am a Camera, which was also based upon Christopher Isherwood's Goodbye to Berlin.
Yeah, so John Kander and Fred Ebb based their work on Isherwood's 1935 memories of pre-Nazi Germany, which then later became that play, and then a film called I Am the Camera.
Yeah. I Am the Camera.
Yeah.
So these stories chronicled the young British writer's visit to the city when Nazism was taking a grip on Germany. And it's almost important that is how this musical is always staged, that something bigger is going on in the peripheral.
Yeah.
But it's not directly affecting these characters, because nobody back then could have ever imagined what was going to
Well, that's it. It's Kander and Ebb's masterstroke was to realise the supreme irony that while the Berlin cabarets were nightly filled with laughter and indulgence and decadent pleasure, seeking frighteningly out of place in the city that was engineering one of the most horrific campaigns of genocide the world has ever known. So in the show, under the disguise of entertainment, the performers could satirise the Nazis almost as much as they wished, and the show's greatest question became how long will the audience, and in some cases the performers themselves, ignore what they are actually being shown. Yeah. And it's just so clever, so very, very clever.
And it should hit you, that the very end should not, it's hard to say it should be a shock because we're watching it post World War II.
It's a shock.
But it should, because we obviously know what went on, but it should be a shock because you've almost been welcomed into this, not a safe space at all, but you've been welcomed into this club where everything else can be left at the door and you just have good fun. But that is not the case. That is definitely not what's happening.
Listen, the first time I experienced Cabaret was a UK touring production of it, where at the very end, the performers who have been wild and debaucherous and entertaining the whole way through, I'm getting emotional, stripped down on stage and walked into the gas chamber. They were gassed, and that's how that production of it ended. And like, talk about blow to the stomach. Like, you felt it in your gut and you went,
because you were,
oh my goodness, what am I watching?
Yeah, you'd spent time with these characters, these people on stage, and then all of a sudden.
And as you say, you don't expect the time in which the show is documenting. You know what happens, but you just don't expect it at the end of Cabaret.
Yeah. And funny, I was watching a documentary.
Episode 4, documentary tally number 2.
Where it is comparing Sound of Music and Cabaret on how they both talk about the same subject, but with different emotions
Yeah.
and how they hit you very differently.
Yeah.
So we know that the Nazis and everything that is going on, but the ending of Sound of Music is much more hopeful, while Cabaret is definitely, there's not as much hope in Cabaret as there is.
Yeah,
This,
that's it.
Sound of Music.
What
we also talked about that lovely production that you just mentioned with our lovely friend of the pod, Francis.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I know that was a production of that I'd seen too, and you were totally right. It just that moment where they walk on, shocking as it was because they were naked. You're going, oh, I know why they're naked.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm watching this
after
the fact, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so sad.
That's right. Francis Foreman brought that up in his interview. Yeah. Interestingly, before Candor and Ebb, British composer Sally Wilson, who had just enjoyed 5 years of a West End run of The Boyfriend, can we do that musical this year? Had independently begun a musical adaptation of Isherwood's book. However, step forward, Mr. Harold Prince. You don't mess with Harold Prince, do you?
Yeah.
And his stature, he acquired the rights and felt that Sandy Wilson's musical efforts missed the required mood. Yeah. So that's when John Candor and Fred Ebb were hired to write the songs instead. And Candor and Ebb researched the period carefully, soaking themselves in the 1920s German jazz, and the music is sublime.
Yeah, so I have a little thing here that I want to read out. So
you're reading from one of your wee books again that we talked about in West Side Story.
So Joe Masterstuff said that the idea for Cabaret came from Hal Prince, and Prince was attracted to the notion of adapting the I Am camera, as we have spoke about. Eventually, during some talks, they decided to structure a musical drama based more on the original stories than on the play. Prince saw parallels between anti-Semitism and corruption of Germany's Weimar Republic of the 20s and early 30s in the racial unrest in the mid-60s America. I went so far in one draft of the show to end it with a film of the March on Selma and the Little Rock riots, but it was god-awful idea and I came to my senses. Strangely, it was initially decided to recruit British composer Sandy Wilson to write the music and the very English Julie Andrews to play Sally Bowles.
No.
As it was, Wilson's trial songs sounded too much like those of the 20s spoof The Boyfriend, and Julie's manager refused to allow her near the project because of the subject matter. So Prince next then suggested Candor and Ebb as composer and lyricist. And then the company signed choreographer Ronald Field, whose experience in nightclubs resulted in a wealth of ideas for setting the musical numbers. And I think that is key because there is a grittiness and a realness to this Kit Kat Club where you feel no matter what production you go and see of it, that you are in a club.
And I think the most up-to-date revival that we were talking about at that's on at the moment is the grittiest version there's ever been. That certainly seems to be what's coming out of the critics who have seen it and people we know that have seen it themselves.
I think it's because they've gone back to this idea too, is everybody was pulling on ideas of what they knew, and we know that that's where theatre, magic is in theatre. If you write about something there's a passion about it. So Prince was stationed with the army in Stuttgart in 1951, and he remembered a notorious nightclub situated in an old church basement. He clearly remembered the show's master of ceremonies, his hair lacquered flat, lips made up in a lurid red cupid's bow, this part here, and a great false eyelashes fluttering. This would be central figure for Prince's show, a commentator and character at the same time. The cabaret itself would become a symbol for the ugly, mindless gaiety of inflation, devastation, and the fascist Berlin. A further visual influence was the satirical paintings of George Gross, a German artist who lived in Berlin at the time. So much influence to make you feel like you were submerged in that period. Yeah,
absolutely. Can we talk about our Sally Bowles quickly before we move on to what we learnt? We've already learnt a lot, really, from the background, really. But obviously, it would be amiss of us to not talk about Judi Dench for a wee minute. So, Judi Dench was the Sally in the 1968 West End production in the Palace Theatre, and critics asserted that Judi Dench was the finest of all the Sallys that appeared in Hal Prince's original stagings. And if she obviously was not much of a singer, which Judi Dench is not, we know that about her, her Sally is a perfect example of how one can give a thrilling musical theatre performance without a great singing voice.
So this is a question that is constantly asked around Cabaret. Should Sally be a good singer or should she not?
No, because in fact, the major flaw, in my opinion, sorry, just my opinion, folks, just my opinion. It might not be a no, but I think it's a no. Because in fact, the major flaw of the 1972 film is its strongest asset, the casting of Liza Minnelli as Sally Bowles. So it has come to be the role that has defined Minnelli's career.
Yeah, it made her step away from her mum's shadow.
You know, she seized her big numbers like a true star shining, you know, with the highest wattage she could. But that was the problem, because Sally Bowles is a small-time singer who will never reach the top. In terms of character, Minnelli's just too good of an entertainer, you know, and I think that means Judi Dench was right and Liza Minnelli was wrong. Shock horror, what would Paddy say?
I know. I can see both, because whenever we're introduced to Sally is meant to have returned. She has been away from the club for a while. So, you know, sometimes you can see if she's a good singer, she's maybe been off doing something else and she's come back. Or is it that she's a really bad singer and she
never was. You know, if she was better, she wouldn't have been in the cabaret clubs. Yeah. You know what I mean?
So, which is really hard now when you've got some amazing singers being Sally. It's like, is that the right direction to go to?
However, are they singing it amazingly? Yeah. Because I remember when the most recent revival, the first cast, you know, we said that Eddie Redmayne was the first MC in the revival, but the first Sally Bowles to be cast was Jessie Buckley.
It was Emma before that.
Emma. So why did Jessie Buckley do the cast recording then?
Yeah, so it was Emma and Eddie, like way back, and then they sort of like
when it opened in London,
and then 2021 was Eddie.
Okay, but I remember when the cast recording came out with Eddie Redmayne and Jessie Buckley. Jessie Buckley was singing "Life Is a Cabaret," and it was like all over the place, and it didn't sound pretty, and it didn't sound like amazing, and everybody was like kind of poo-pooing the cast recording, and I was like, no, you people don't get it. I do a musical theatre podcast. I know what I'm talking about. No, but I was like, no, you don't get it. Like that is that is the perfect, you know, interpretation. That's the way it should be. You know, at times she's like shouting, and
that's it. I think sometimes some actresses try to really sing those songs, and they are meant to get under your skin in like a bad way.
So I'm hoping from your original question, why are they casting these great singers? I'm hoping that it doesn't matter how great a singer you are, it is being done the way it should be being done, because Jessie Buckley's got an amazing voice. Yeah, true. Do you know what I mean? And she won the Olivier for it, and you know. Yeah. I didn't realise there was poor Emma. I didn't even know the Emma that we're talking about before, Jessie.
See, I'm terrible with names. I can picture her face and everything. I just need to, as I'm getting older, my memory is definitely not as good.
Yeah.
So,
tell me about it, sister. Right, shall we move on to our musical lyrical lingos then?
Absolutely. So my first thing that I learned was
about
this massive production in 1993 that was directed by Sam Mendes.
Yes.
It was originally in the John Mayer Theatre.
Yes.
And then it transported to Studio 54.
Yes.
Done there. And it had Jane Horrocks as Sally.
Little voice.
Literally screamed it. And we had Alan Cummings. Oh. I didn't know that this was then brought back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Exactly the same production.
Yeah, it was so, of its time, was so groundbreaking and like powerful. Like it was so successful as well.
So that was a major thing I learned. And then also I learned about Hal Prince using the opportunity for Cabaret to become the first concept musical.
Okay.
A show with a serious central idea to which all elements of the music and the staging are then related. Though technically Cabaret is half concept, half traditional, the songs are used to develop the characters as well as themes. So that was my major learning from the musical.
I learned quite a lot from the lyrics. Obviously, in the first number, it opens the show and MC sings "Welcome," and I've done it a couple of times, so I'm not going to do it again. Okay, well, welcome, Ben Avenue, welcome. And here MC begins a pattern that continues for the rest of the song, where he sings the phrase first in German, then in French, and then in English. And that was a way of appealing to the Kit Kat Club's linguistical diverse crowd.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's many phrases that he sings in, you know, in that order, you know, German, French, English, the same thing. He also sings in here, life is beautiful. The girls are beautiful. Even the orchestra is beautiful. That idea of in here, life is beautiful. It was this was the underlying message of Cabaret, like that, and we've talked about it, the ignorance of this line comes back many times, you know, for a musical that's set in 1931 during the rise of the Nazi Party. The people of Cabaret and much of Germany willfully ignored the issues that were beginning to arise until it was too late.
Yeah, and each character had a reason why. Cliff was, you know, he was new in town, so he didn't really understand. This is maybe just something that was going on. Fräulein
Schneider, yeah.
Too old, can't get involved. Sally, too focused on, you know, her life, and whether you believe MC is real or a fragment of.
He's an interesting character. They're an interesting character.
Yeah, it's interesting that you know, it's actually very real.
Yeah,
their thoughts that people would have today.
Yeah, funny you should mention Fräulein Schneider. In her, she's gorgeous, sweet character, older lady, as you say, living on her own. She sings a song called So What, and she sings, my summers were spent by the sea, so what, and I had a maid doing all the housework, not me, so what. And that specifically, you know, that line, she actually, in the original text in the books, she spent her summers in the Baltic, and these lines about a maid and vacation were taken directly from the Ashwood's book, Goodbye to Berlin.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Well, it was the first time I probably understood that they were talking about marks. Was actually the currency at the time, so that was definitely something from the lyrics. And just quickly jumping back to Welcome, I never realised how sexual that song was whenever I was originally listening to it.
I mean, most of the Kit Kat stuff.
So that definitely was a lesson that was learned the older I got.
Yeah.
That song.
Yeah. Fräulein Schneider also has another wee song called It Couldn't Please Me More, when she meets a gentleman, a Jewish gentleman. And she sings, if you brought me diamonds, if you brought me pearls, if you brought me roses like some other gents, might bring the other girls, it couldn't please me more than a gift I see, a pineapple for me, because he brought her a pineapple. The first time I ever saw it, I was like, what? A pineapple? Why? But actually, although pineapples are now just another fruit, we don't appreciate a pineapple. They were originally considered a delicacy item and a show of wealth in Europe, since getting one required connections or more to having a piece of fruit shipped across like the Pacific Ocean in a timely manner. And
people used to rent pineapples to get their portraits taken.
Yeah, so they looked fancy and wealthy. Yeah. So. And then we did talk about Fräulein, didn't we, when we were talking about Sound of Music, being a title or how to address an unmarried German woman. It came back to me. I was like, Fräulein, I know what that means from Sound of Music.
One of my favourite songs in Cabaret is Don't Tell Mama.
Don't Tell Mama.
And
Don't tell
Antwerp,
Mama what you do.
which is the city in Belgium.
Yes. She also sings Keep This From My Matter. Matter being the German for mama. Though my dancing is not against the law, she sings. And that's ironic because being a cabaret dancer and an implied prostitute in the show is the reason Sally will actually be sent to the death camps at the end of the show. What about tour ladies, doobly-doop-de-doo, tour ladies, doobly-doop-de-doo, tour
I
ladies.
think I was more focused on the actual musical.
Yeah. Doodly
So much.
doodly-doo-de-doo, and I'm the only man. Yeah. You can see that one of the ladies is actually a man, and that's because in that time homosexuality wasn't accepted.
No.
Can we talk about probably the most, in my opinion, one of the most hard-hitting of the musical numbers is Tomorrow Belongs to Me.
Okay. What makes you say that?
Well, because the story is set in Berlin immediately pre-World War II, Kander and Ebb needed to supply a faux Nazi anthem. So they wrote Tomorrow Belongs to Me, and they came up with this beautiful yet chilling, purposeful anthem-like song. When Cabaret opened, its writers actually received many letters condemning them for the use of a real Nazi song. So people who heard it thought it was a real Nazi anthem. And according to Mark Stein in his History of Musicals, Broadway Babies Say Goodnight, one audience member even swore blind that he remembered hearing the song in a Nazi death camp as victims were herded off to the gas chambers. The song was a pure invention of Kander and Ebb, but it hit a nerve, as it was intended to do. One of the lines says, but gather together to greet the storm, tomorrow belongs to me. And the title of the song communicates as subtext that rise of fascism. Yeah. It is brutal. And by placing the song in the voice of a boy soprano, leading a crowd of patriots, Kander and Ebb mixed the optimism towards the future with the foreknowledge that Germany would go down a dark path. And the point of the song is that bad ideas don't present themselves as bad ideas. They present themselves as, and more importantly, are considered by people who hold them to be good and noble. Yeah. So it's a cross between an a cappella folk song and a hymn. That's right.
Tomorrow Belongs to Me has a chilling beauty and is one of the most dramatically effective songs in the show. So you're totally right. Closing the first act with a bang, sung empathetically. Aaron Flaxen heard yes, it is one of the most innocent and most malevolent of moments. Ebb very cleverly begins with images of a stag in the sunshine, the green of the lime tree and the gold of the Rhine, in order to underline the links which fascists made between their policies and the laws of nature. This was the only offstage song retained by the film. Because the film, obviously, if you only know the film, I would encourage you to just do a stage version.
And there's a lot of differences to the stage version and the film.
And
lots.
Like characters are put out and new characters put in. So they're
it's
not
almost like two separate, aren't they?
And this was the only offstage song retained by the film and gained greatly on celluloid by being shot on location in a rural setting.
And one of the lines, the branch of the linden is leafy and green, symbolises peace, love, unity and protection in many cultures, particularly in Europe, as the linden tree is often considered as a sacred tree associated with community gatherings like marriages or healings. Its branches are seen as a representation of those positive values, back to, people not seeing bad things as being bad things, them seeing them holding to be good and noble,
Maybe This Time though, which is a song which was just for the film, but
maybe
now
this time
it's in the musicals. A lot of people say that song is Liza Minnelli.
Yeah.
You know, and that is the reason why it took...
She is the song.
That's why it took on this like a whole persona, and that's I suppose what you were talking about at the beginning. There's maybe songs which people are aware of, but they maybe don't know about Cabaret, but they'll know songs. So just a little bit. The song was written for the film, though it has turned up in revivals of the stage show. It is particularly interesting for the way in which it encapsulates the personality of Liza Minnelli herself, for whom it was specifically written. Her doubts, energy, romanticism and sensitivity are all in evidence. Candor and ebb have always mirrored the contradictions of Minnelli's life in the music they have written for her. One could almost say they have structured her public image. In this song, Sally Bowles is Liza Minnelli.
Yeah, fair. That is very fair. Yeah. I mean, the characters are like Sally Bowles is a brilliant character, as is the MC. Yeah. And as you say, what is he like? Yeah. In one of his songs, If You Could See Her, where it's in the Kit Kat Club and he's with a gorilla. And he's in a relation. So bizarre, but so clever at the same time. You know, Candor and Eber underlined the warped reflection that was their Kit Kat Club with its odd and unsettling MC by having like real life plot. Yeah. Goings on or episodes directly corresponding to songs that were being performed in the club. Yeah. So at this time in the musical, Sally Bowles' landlady, Fräulein Schneider, is worried about her love affair with the Jewish man, the lovely man who brought her the pineapple. Yeah. And the club's MC introduces a flamboyant number in which he complains that nobody approves of his own romance with a gorilla. That song ends with a sudden and I think the most brutal payoff line in the whole show, where he sings, "If you could see her through my eyes, she wouldn't look Jewish at all." And it's another like punch, like kick in the stomach. And I'm not Jewish, so you know, for Jews that must like horrendous, like you just can't imagine, can you? Yeah. You cannot imagine what they've lived through. The lines and songs are a comment to the way German society viewed Jews during the Nazis' rise to power, as demonic and not as human beings. Yeah. Like just...
Yeah, and this was apparently, this idea was concocted by Ebb himself, and then he presented the idea to Prince, and he was delighted with it. However, the song gave the show's creators a bit of a headache when a Jewish pressure group objected strongly to the gorilla/Jew equation. Thus, the song's last line was altered in productions to "She isn't a Meskite." At all. Meskite means ugly face in Yiddish. But I mean, if you look at that and you're like, why is he dancing about with gorilla? But it's so clever that it's like there's so much context in this musical.
Like, and you go, this is ridiculous. Yeah. And then you get that last line and you go, you almost... Well, you do. You feel guilty for going, what was that number? Or like, what is this number? Yeah. Because then you hear that last line and you go, oh crap, right, okay.
It's almost like an onion, this, isn't it? Like you peel away so many layers.
1,000%.
And like each one's going to make you cry.
Yeah. And for many years, Elsie in Cabaret completely confused me. You know the way she sings, I used to have this girlfriend known as Elsie. So like... Elsie isn't actually real in reality now that I've listened to it and I'm a wee bit older and I'm going, oh, Elsie's not Elsie. Yeah. Elsie was just a metaphor for Sally's lifestyle. She sings, she wasn't what you call a blushing flower. As a matter of fact, she rented by the hour. So flowers are associated with fragility and beauty, and blushing with innocence. You know, it insinuates that Elsie is actually a prostitute. Easy to infer that Sally was at one time a lady of the night. Yeah. She sings, what good is sitting alone in your room, which refers to the large population who had to hide or were afraid to go outside as the Nazi party slowly took over. As you say, like onion layers, depth. Too clever. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like too clever for me. Yeah. For the first probably 10, 15 years of my life, until I go, oh my goodness, I fully get it. Like I actually get it now as to how ridiculously clever, but also powerful.
Yeah.
And I suppose what we were saying at the beginning, it is probably one of the most important musicals out there for what it encourages their audience to think about or to question or to see within themselves.
Cabaret, the song, should do that as well. And funny, that line that you mentioned is also, it seems innocent, as you've said, but it's also a little jibe to those that are sitting doing nothing whenever something is happening.
Funny you say that, because I think if it's not my favourite song, it's one of my, it's the song I want to sing most if I ever play the MC, and it's his last song, I Don't Care Much. I Don't Care Much Goers. Alan Cummings.
Beautiful.
His version of it.
Yeah.
He also, Alan Cummings, did his own album. And he does a brilliant version of this on his album. Go and listen to it. But anyway, he sings in I Don't Care Much. Warnings fair, I don't care very much. And that's MC's character representing the spirit of Germany at the time. And the sentiment here is that people in society were often not recognising or ignoring the rise of Nazism, or even being influenced through propaganda to not feel particularly opposed to a belief that, a belief system that wasn't actively affecting their own lives. It wasn't affecting them at that time, thus enabling that harmful ideology to kind of, grow.
Yeah.
And,
I know it's
that indifference or that apathy or lack of care that was in Germany at the beginning of. Oh God, aren't you glad you live now and you didn't live then?
I mean, there's definitely, we've talked about this before, how musicals are great, that they teach you something.
Yeah.
And we can't rewrite history, and I don't ever feel like we should, because I have, but we can most certainly learn from it.
Do you not think musical theatre students should have to study a musical like Cabaret?
Rather than Blood Brothers? Do you mean you feel like...
Yeah, but I just think it needs I think there's so much in it.
Yeah. I think it would be an excellent text to study.
Yeah.
There
you go. Do you have any standing ovations?
I love Maybe This Time.
Maybe This Time. I love Joel Grey, Alan Cummings, Judi Dench and Jessie Buckley.
Very good.
They're my...
Wayne Sleep and Toya Wilcox also did a production.
Yeah, I saw Wayne Sleep, but wasn't that fussed.
Okay, I quite like Wayne Sleep and some stuff.
Yeah, some stuff.
Yeah, it's like you said, tickets are hard to come by.
It's so annoying. I really want to see this new revival.
I wonder would they ever do pro shots? Do you feel like pro shots are becoming more and more popular?
I don't know. Yes, to answer your question, I do think pro shots are becoming more popular, but I also don't know if this production of Cabaret is right for a pro shot. You won't get the right impact, because they've rebuilt the whole theatre. It apparently it is you don't go in the front of the theatre, like they take you in a side door. It's like you're going into a German Kit Kat cabaret club.
Yeah, well, the Sam Mendes version is online.
Yes, and
anybody has not seen it,
and it's excellent.
It is.
It really is good.
Wonderful. It's weird to say that though. It is. The production.
No,
is
the production is wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. And Alan Cummings in that is what?
And also, be prepared if you are even listening to the musical for the first time, even just soundtrack wise, and you aren't, you haven't, it is quite gritty. It's a gritty musical, so it's not going to necessarily leave you feeling happy.
No, but I also hope maybe listeners who haven't experienced a soundtrack of Cabaret before might understand it a bit better having listened to this episode. I hope that's what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't blow our trumpet, but what I mean is we've talked a lot and in a lot of detail, I feel, in this episode about this musical that hopefully, if you're listening to the soundtrack post listening to this, you might get it a bit more and might get the grittiness a wee bit more because you have a bit more of what's behind it.
Yeah, and do also see the film and Cabaret the musical as two separate things.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people think they're the same, and they're
definitely not. Yeah.
What Bob Fosse did was a really interesting film.
Yeah.
But it definitely, I think, definitely hit the mark for a couple of those characters like Fräulein Schleider and Schutz.
Not her.
No, not him. They are not in it. And I feel like they're missing. Though there's two other characters.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It just doesn't hit as well as they.
It never. Do you know what? Cabaret the film never really did hit with me.
Right. Okay.
For some reason, but anyway. Yeah. Shall we move on to this week's what Paddy will do? I'm going to ask you again because it involves like the leading lady really this week. So, what would Paddy do?
Okay.
Reprise Liza Minnelli's role in Cabaret, or Patti LuPone's role in Evita?
Oh, so what would she rather perform?
What would you do? Would you rather reprise a Liza Minnelli role in Cabaret? Or Patti LuPone's role in Evita. Oh. And you have to perform that part as that person. So Liza Minnelli, Sally Bowles, or Patti LuPone, Evita. It's a hard one this week, isn't it?
Oh. Do you know what? I think I'm going to go for Evita. Because I love the way Patti goes.
Yeah. He loves you, or he supports you, it's one of you. If not, how could he love me?
Yeah, I think
it's my favourite bit of the whole show because of Paddy.
I think I could do Liza well.
Yeah.
I would love the challenge.
Yeah. The sass of Paddy's Evita.
Yeah.
She's a way to practice that, folks.
I'm a way to do it.
He loves you. Until next week, folks.
Bye.
Bye.
Tune in as the memories grow.